The mystery of the love that is divinity is with you all. Thanks be to all that is holy.
Welcome. That opening statement is one that Pastor Dawn often used at the start of worship for Holy Cross here in Newmarket, an inclusive community that is progressive in approach and Christ-like in action. Well, as you can tell, none of us here is Pastor Dawn. I'm Jane.
I'm Eric.
I'm Sharon.
I am Andrew.
We are members of the worship team. And over the summer months, some of us are taking a more prominent place in front of the camera. And to be honest, it is a little intimidating.
If you are joining us as part of your regular worship, or if you are joining us for the first time, we welcome you. We hope that you find what we offer supports your spiritual journey.
Our summer program will include music, prayer, readings, reflection, and inspirational images. We are pleased you have joined us. Again, welcome as we worship together.
The power of our cosmic Christ, the love which is divinity, and the joy of the Spirit is with you all.
Thanks be to all that is holy.
Creator of all life, source of healing and hope, the world yearns for compassion and love. May we see beyond our prejudices and strive to understand that you are present in all creation, so that with clearer sight, greater knowledge, and loving hearts, we recognize our relationship to this planet and our dependence on one another. Take away the fears and inadequacies that prevent us from getting involved in new challenges. May what we see not reflect who we are, but who you are, lover, loved, and breath of love. Amen.
A reading from the anonymous gospel writer we know as Luke. An expert on the law stood up to put Jesus to the test and said, "Teacher, what must I do to inherit everlasting life?" Jesus answered, "What is written in the law? How do you read it?" The expert on the law replied, "You must love the Most High God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your strength, and with all your mind, and your neighbor as yourself." Jesus said, "You have answered correctly. Do this, and you'll live." But the expert on the law, seeking self-justification, pressed Jesus further. "And just who is my neighbor?" Jesus replied, "There was a traveler going down from Jerusalem to Jericho who fell prey to robbers. The traveler was beaten, stripped naked, and left half dead. A priest happened to be going down the same road. The priest saw the traveler lying beside the road, but passed by on the other side. Likewise, there was a Levite who came the same way. This one, too, saw the afflicted traveler and passed by on the other side. But a Samaritan who was taking the same road also came upon the traveler, and filled with compassion, approached the traveler and dressed the wounds, pouring on oil and wine. Then the Samaritan put the wounded person on a donkey, went straight to an inn, and there took care of the injured one. The next day the Samaritan took out 2 silver pieces and gave them to the innkeeper with the request, "Look after this person, and if there is any further expense, I'll repay you on the way back." Which of these 3, in your opinion, was the neighbor to the traveler who fell in with the robbers? The answer came, the one who showed compassion. Jesus replied, "Then go and do the same."
When I told my daughter that I was due to present a reflection on the Good Samaritan, I said, "But we don't find people on the side of the highway these days." "Oh, yes, you do," she corrects me, and tells me the following story about one of her friends. Kay, a young woman in her 30s, was knocked over on the subway platform at Bloor and Young. Now, Bloor and Young at rush hour is chaotic, people pushing their way off the train and others pushing their way on, everyone eager to get home. But no one stopped to help her. Kay was left lying on the platform. Unbelievable, we say. Why didn't anybody stop? Did they think it was somebody else's job to do that? What thoughts allow us to walk on by? I, of course, equate myself with the Good Samaritan. As a medical professional, I have done my share of rescuing. I've stopped at fatal traffic accidents, helped victims, called relatives, and then very thankfully handed them over to the paramedics. But what about the less obvious? The homeless on the streets of Toronto, the refugees, those who I can't communicate with, the foreigner, the dirty, the repulsive. How do I respond to the mentally ill guy shouting on the subway? Frankly, I avoid eye contact. He's unpredictable, and he scares me. I have actually changed subway carriages to avoid people like that. So, I'm the priest and the Levite too. What thoughts go through our heads that allow us to walk on by or cross over to the other side? Indifference, perhaps? Not my problem? Or I don't know what to do. Perhaps she's drunk or an addict. Or I have to get home. I don't have time. No, I think that Martin Luther King Jr. had it right. Fear. Fear of the personal cost to me. My time, my money, my emotional health, my ignorance, fear of doing the wrong thing. We even have a Good Samaritan law to legally protect those who try to help and may inadvertently cause harm. So others do have the same fears. But Jesus remarks that the Samaritan was moved by compassion. So is our compassion larger than our fears? Why didn't the priest and Levite stop? We can project all sorts of reasons onto them, but this is a story to challenge us. Both of them were educated, with status in society, privileged, respected, busy. Sound familiar? Yep. We have been led to believe that it was a matter of ritual purity. But Amy Jill Levine, a Jewish theologian, comments that both the priest and Levite would have finished their duties at the temple because they were leaving Jerusalem. So that argument is invalid. And according to Jewish law, it was also essential to bury and give dignity to the dead. So passing by a body without checking whether he was dead or alive was a serious contravention of the law. Now the road from Jerusalem to Jericho is about 18 miles long, through surrounding hillsides, and notorious for crime. A good 6-hour walk, and a dangerous journey. Perhaps we should blame the victim. After all, he was traveling alone along a hazardous route. However, the underlying problem is the crime of violence and theft, often a result of a life of poverty. Or was he suffering from poor mental health? This thief was living in the hills and outside the walls of both Jericho and Jerusalem, a life of exclusion. Why? Did he have no work, no home, no hope, no family? Where does violent crime occur most often in our society? Who needs to steal in order to survive? Those who live in areas of poverty, those who lack work, overcrowding, racial discrimination, these all result in hopelessness and drug and alcohol abuse, which leads to crime. In some areas, belonging to a gang is the only way to ensure your safety. What are we doing to alleviate these problems? Or are we just passing by on the other side of town? I read a story. I don't know if it's true or just a modern parable. It was about a young woman who stole a loaf of bread. Taken to court so that true justice could be done, she pleaded guilty. When asked by the judge why she had stolen the bread, the woman explained that she was just trying to feed her children. The judge acquits her and instructs everyone present in the courthouse to give $1 to the woman. Now that seems like justice to me. So what am I doing to help the jobless, the homeless, the addicted, the mentally ill in our society? Am I agitating for safe transportation for our Indigenous communities so that no more women and girls don't make it home safely along the highway of tears? What about adequate homes, unbiased, compassionate healthcare on and off the reserves? Do I contribute to alcohol and drug addiction support? What about food insecurity? Another name for hunger and malnourishment. Do I support the local food bank or Newmarket van? As we know, many of our Indigenous communities are still having to boil water or are forced to buy water in plastic bottles, which adds to the pollution problem. You and I just have to turn on the tap. We do know the needs, but being well fed and watered, well housed and with excellent access to health care and transportation, we continue with our lives, aware but not always doing as much as we could. Like the priest and Levite, we do walk by on the other side.
either because we're afraid or we feel helpless, overwhelmed by the needs of these our neighbors. It's true, the needs are overwhelming, but as the Talmud says, do not be daunted by the enormity of the world's grief. Do justly now, love mercy now, walk humbly now. You are not obligated to complete the work, but neither are you free to abandon it. Recently, we've witnessed bodies of Ukrainian civilians lying in the streets where they've been left by the Russians. In contrast, we have seen Ukrainians digging up their enemies' soldiers' bodies and attempting to return them to their families in Russia. What an example of good Samaritans, giving dignity to the dead despite the fact they are enemies. There are good Samaritans in Russia too, like the Nobel Peace Prize winner, Russian journalist Dmitry Muratov, who auctioned off his Nobel Peace Prize to raise money for Ukrainian child refugees. Jesus contrasts the privileged, educated, and law-abiding Jewish elite with the despised Samaritans. Where do we place ourselves in this story? Are we challenged to rethink our assumptions and biases? The Good Samaritan was not alone in his efforts. He enlisted help from the innkeeper. Neither do we have to address these inequities alone. Like the Samaritan, we can financially support agencies who provide for the underprivileged. We can join with other groups, thereby maximizing our efforts, and each bring our own particular skills, while gaining support and encouragement from each other. The Good Samaritan provided health care, transportation, food and lodging for the robbed man, and a wage for the innkeeper. He took responsibility for a fellow human being and did what he could. He asked for nothing in return. May we all go and do likewise. Amen.
the prayer attributed to Jesus, translated by Elizabeth Gibbs, 1968. Love, which enfolds us here and now, we sanctify your presence. May the ever-evolving blossom, as it is written in the seed on the earth, which is of heaven, teach us now to trust in thy sustaining will, and to love ourselves so that we may love each other. Let us leave behind all base acts which keep us from loving, for we are the universe, which is energy, which is love, which is God, as it always has been, is now, and will be forever. Amen.